We're joined in the studio now by Professor Okeke Chukwu, who is the Executive Director, Development Specs Academy, to talk about what's happened so far with regard to the protest. Prof, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
I don't know how you made it here, if it was easy for you, Prof. I ask this because it was easier for me initially, but you know, I'm wondering if it would be same on my way out of this place. But let me ask you this question.
Yeah.
Is this the outcome you expected?
In a situation like this, there's actually no fairly predictable outcome. Lagos is not Abuja, and we're in Abuja. If you're going to carry out a protest in Abuja, you should arrange for greater logistical support in terms of facility for movement. Lagos has a smaller land area. Within 5 kilometers, you have a massive population. In Abuja, within 5 kilometers, except in the outskirts, you don't have a large population. So assuming you plan to come from Lugbe, from all those places to protest in places like Metama, chances are that by the time you've put an hour or two into it, you get very hungry. Unless there's a vehicle to take you back, you have a challenge. The location of the National Stadium, for instance, is very unattractive for rioters or for protesters because it's in an isolated area. So access to that place is a job on its own. So if you have a fleet of vehicles, take you there, make your point and go. But if you don't, there will be logistical problems.
Were you surprised that the protesters refused to be confined to the National Stadium? First off, they refused to go into the National Stadium as from the court order, Federal High Court order, and eventually moved to the Eagle Square where it escalated.
Yeah, no, that is not surprising. Protesters are not protesting to make anybody, particularly the government, happy. They have the impressions they want to make. They have their choice of where they think that impression will be well spread. They will have preferred a free, unrestrained access to public spaces. That didn't happen. So they got to the National Stadium. The other thing is that the security agencies and the military are spread too thin. They are not enough to manage the space. So I'm not surprised that it went on the way it did. But even what happened at the Eagle Square, in the last 2-3 hours, because we also have some other people who are out in town monitoring it, there's relatively, if you like, tolerable movement. That's why I could come, undisturbed and unchallenged. And in the places where there was activity, I think they've taken a break right now. In some of those places, they might come back. But on the face of it, I've not heard of casualties, which is a good thing. I've also not seen signs of high-handedness, but the point is this. Do Nigerians have reason to come out and protest? Yes. Do they have a right to protest? Yes. Is it possible that that opportunity of protesting could be taken over by hoodlums? The answer is yes. And therefore, it is the responsibility of government to ensure that there's no real damage to public peace. At the same time, the right to protest must be accommodated. That's different from riot.
I want to be able to talk about, you know, the dynamics that we're seeing play out. We're seeing a lot of people who are being described as hoodlums. You know, we're seeing people being described as those who are being paid to come and hijack protests. We're seeing anti-protesters against the protest. We're seeing all of this happen. And like you said, not surprising. This is normal. However, the security agencies' handling of this situation, it does feel like since NSAS, the skills needed to cover this sort of situation, the skills needed to handle this sort of volatility. Would you say that they have upped their game since NSAS, or are they still grappling as we saw them do years ago?
No, as a matter of fact, I see conspicuous improvement. The problem is not the skill, but personnel volume. They just don't have enough people. They are not so very well equipped. I'm not aware of any specialized training. But the good news is that in the places where I've seen, I saw them in about 11 distinct spaces on my way here because I left early in order to see that. They were in controlled positions at entries and exits from key settlement areas, and nobody was being harassed. You could see their vehicle, you could see them standing around, but you could drive past. You know, that's on one side. On the other side, and that's the question of any lessons from NSAS. Yes, there has been lessons, but the most critical thing to note here is that those who are protesting against the protesters are giving the government a bad name and a bad image. Because look at those protesting. Don't they look hungry and frustrated and confused? Don't they look like people who pick your pocket? So they can't be protesting against those who are saying we're suffering. The impression it creates is that they've been paid to do that. And that's not nice. This thing can be contained. You want to protest? Yes, do it here. We've seen protests where the police actually flanked and protected them. The concern is not, and there are two perspectives. Oh, the government doesn't want us to protest. The other perspective is we've seen protests in the past that led to complete breakdown of law and order. June 12th, I was on the Guardian editorial board. All of us were hell-bent on supporting that project. Nigerians voted. They didn't care it was a Muslim ticket, and the election is annulled. Now you're driving from your office home on Ikorodu Road. The fact that you have a car means you're one of those who ate Nigeria's money. Fellow journalists were attacked. If you looked dressed like him, you're in trouble. How can you wear this kind of suit if you're not looting money in Aso Rock? So the level of thinking in that spectrum of society is that anybody who looks healthy must be doing better than me. And all those who are doing better than me are those who are, quote unquote, eating government money. So that fact is there, the possibility of that hijack. But the mistake is to have anti-protest protesters. It's disgraceful. I
mean, you made a point right there about the total breakdown of law and order. This is day one. We're seeing a lot of people talking about this is just a few hours. This is just a few hours in day one. Does this have the potential to get a lot worse?
What I think is that it will give both the protesters and the law enforcement agencies there's something on the table. They'll go back to recalibrate. A lot of people didn't go out today, individuals like you and I. Many businesses didn't open, filling stations didn't, banks. And so they've looked at it today. There will also be that tentative watching of tomorrow. What I suspect is that the protesters will go and regroup, recalibrate and say, okay, this is how it happened yesterday, this is what I'm going to do tomorrow. I believe that they stand to gain a lot by structuring their protest better. You come out, you want to make your point, you have your placard, bring out distinct messages. We are protesting. Yes, we know they've written it, we know they've talked about it, but that expression of anger is a right. Destruction of public property is not a right. Molestation of other people who are expressing other rights is not a right. Therefore, some measure of control. The organizers should give themselves credibility by ensuring that their people are well organized.
So who should they present those demands to? Because on the other hand, you're supposed to have government officials receive those demands. It's a dialogue. A protest is not just to get in the streets and disrupt activities or, as you say, carry placards, is it?
It is. I am not aware that a protest is a dialogue, quite frankly.
But they're supposed to present demands at some point.
They've already made them. Remember they held meetings which broke down? And so apparently whatever they were saying in those meetings with IGP, government functionaries, etc., didn't play out very well. Now they're out in the domain, placing that demand where, okay, this is what we're angry about. Allow them do that. Because they are not armed, the spaces are defined, etc. And then even provide some genuine argument. I've seen those attempting to defend government. One person came, I think, was this on your channel a few hours ago, and was reeling off all the things the president had done, student loan. How would you come here and be talking about that sort of thing? Who says the president is not working? Imagine that somebody came out and said, look, the anger of Nigerians is justified because there's hunger, there's inflation. No question about that. We can't deny it. I have cousins, even though I'm in government, they're all suffering. But I also know that had there been no Boko Haram, what's going on there about food was predicted 3 years ago. People are not farming. Now, some measure of integrity gain emerges from it. But to do auto denial, it makes you look cheap.
Okay. Yeah. Prof, let's, our colleagues in Lagos would like to join the conversation.
Rolling coverage we have right here, and we have great minds, from all over the country, giving us their own perspective, you know, at this time, what to expect, how to go about this, and we have a couple of them via Zoom. Even though I feel a little jittery about Zoom at this point because I've seen network from our service providers today. It's not been the best, so whatever we get, we'll definitely hope we can actually speak to our guests joining us virtually at this time. So we have Segun Wosoye as an institutional reforms advocate, founder, Social Intervention Advocacy Foundation. He's going to be joining us via Zoom. We also have Juliet Benite. She's a leadership coach, also joining us via Zoom. And definitely we're going to be talking about what to expect and where we are right now. But let me start with Mr. Segun Wosoye at this point. Definitely things are moving really fast at this time with this protests on hardship. But there's some people that say protests don't really work. I'd like to put that question to you first. Do protests work?
Thank you very much, distinguished. I believe that protests can work if the organizers are aware of the use to which they can put their protests, beginning from their understanding of the issues, beginning from the understanding of the motive and the definition of what they are trying to do. If you look at the NSAS reform police NG advocacy, it was well designed, it was well researched, it took time, there were interventions, there were engagement, it wasn't an all-out protest, and it got what it wanted, its objective, and also its end goal in terms of kickstarting the reformation of the Nigerian police and also removing the poster child of the culture of impunity, which was SARS and the rest of the variants. So it did not happen overnight. Anything that would take government to see or all arms of government to engage before you can get things done will take time. But when you get wired to believe that just gathering people, having incited them to come to the street, you're going to solve any problem, you probably you don't actually understand the problem, because it has been said, whether you look at from Carl Jung's perspective or any of the philosophers, you will know that when people gather together and crowd together to form a mob, the dynamism of the collective mind inside of each individual are let loose. Then you begin to see beasts, demons, and every other thing that have been dormant over time being unleashed in that particular crowd. That's why people don't even believe what they do when they're in the midst of the crowd. And that's exactly what is happening. And in a heated polity, that's why people are saying, and authorities are saying, this is not the best time to protest. In a heated polity, when people gather, even if it is, okay, I'll give you an example. In Lagos, MTN blocked some lines and they asked people to come and relink their lines to their lines. And when they gathered there, it didn't take long before they started pulling down the fence of MTN. Take Federal Technical College, for instance. They've been having issues with their provost for a while. It had turned into a deadlock, and the external parties came in to solve the problem. They were all attacked. Their cars were vandalized. To some, these are peaceful protests, as far as they are concerned, and they will not take responsibility for the damage and vandalism. They will simply shift the post and say it is the authorities that are. And that's what's happening now. If you look at Kano, if you look at Borno, if you look at Gwagalada, they are all burning now because the people were merely incited to come out because they are hungry. Hunger is the only thing uniting them. Emotion is the only thing they are expressing, and there's no strategy whatsoever. Nobody can claim to have control over anything right now.
All right, Mr. Wosoye, you did mention if this was the right time, for a protest. And I'm trying to, imagine in my head, when really is the right time for a protest? How do you define that right time?
Timing in protest, you have to look at if you must use protest, because again, we have been made to believe that protest is the only way you can engage government, which is not true. It's a fallacy. There are other means. I'm using advocacy, for example. This is media talk now. This is our own form of protest, to let the government know that you have not done well in communicating and carrying the youth along with your programs. It's not that you are doing nothing, but you should have seen this ahead and communicated better, so that people will not exploit the lack of communication and the gap between the government and the people to the point of inciting them against the government, telling them all sorts of things that will make them take to the street, believing it is when they get to the street that all their problems will go away. So when you say timing, already things are heated. And we have seen non-protest related events leading into violence, even before the date of the protest. So whatever that is happening now is no surprise to anybody who can observe the time, who have been around for quite a while, who have seen several protests in the country based on history, whether from the 1965, leading to the coup of 1966, and all the other protests from the South and the rest of them, and how it has led to violence. And nothing has changed right now, because people are, the organizers and the people who are benefiting from the chaos have not matured themselves enough to leave the military interregnum age. They are still stuck there, and they believe everything they did then can be repeated now to get what they want. But unfortunately, they are playing the script. They are not even the author of the script that they are playing. Because the idea here is to fight the government to the point where they are left no choice than to forsake the trajectory of progress and backtrack on all the policies that they have decided to do so that they can go back to the old ways. That's exactly the plan. And people are making themselves useful idiots.
I think, Dr. Usman, if you ask me, just a second, Dr. Usman, I think the challenge here is whether or not government is even aware of all of this intelligence, if I can use that word that you're giving to us, because if they knew that this was going to happen, I believe that there could have been some significant engagement that could have actually forestalled some of the mayhem that we see being unleashed. Because as we speak now, we're hearing that in Katsina State, for instance, there are some activities that are not very, very palatable. So if we could take a quick, trip to Katsina State to let you know the kind of vandalism that people are engaging in right now, destruction of public property, pulling down this and that, and the kind of thing that the governor of Lagos State was saying we don't want to repeat of. Right now, it's what happened just 4 years ago, and the question we're asking is, have we learned any lessons as a people? And as a government, have we learned a lesson? So let's see what's happening in Katsina right now, because I don't know, what you make of it.
We need a justice. We need a better life. We need a justice. We need a justice.
Right, Ayo. So I guess
so that's a noise.
This is one of the risks of protests, vandalism. We're seeing that play out.
Absolutely. We can't get out of this without having a kind of mental picture of exactly what we want. So, Madam Benichi, we saw this coming in a way. It's not what we expected, but it is what it is right now. So where would you dock at this? You're a leadership coach, and there is no leadership without followership. Now, we don't want to find ourselves here, but here we are. What have we lost that brought us to this point? And is there a path back?
Thank you very much for having me. Good afternoon, Nigerians. There's so much that we have lost over the years that has brought us to where we are at these repeated issues. And when people say protest doesn't work, all over the world, non-violent protest has always worked, from the Gandhis of this world to Martin Luther King Jr. And because of Martin Luther King, we could have an Obama president. But of course, protests must be in context and make sure that it's non-violent. And the reason why we are here, especially as Africans, and we must remember that these issues happening in Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria is pouring up, and the international government and the world is asking, is this really an Africa uprising? And African leaders have done badly at leadership. Leadership, especially transformational leadership that we espouse, is a people that inspire their followers and inspire the society to greater heights, changing perception and values. In less than 1 year of this government, our lives have drastically changed. A few of us who have all the grammar and the Turinchi, who have a bit of money in our pockets, who are surviving and we're doing well. But it's irresponsible of any leader to ever think that the agitation of the people is false or is not required. Leadership, number one responsibility is service, to serve the people they claim to want to lead. By the time a man or a woman wants to come into governance and wants to lead in a society, she should have known the attendant issues that are happening within that society. So we should stop pretending as the elite class of Nigeria. For the last 60 years, we have been irresponsible elite class. Nigerians, especially with a high level of education, we have not done well in leadership. And it's time for us to take responsibility. And the number one responsibility of leadership is listening to the people. We have enough talent, home and abroad, to run an excellent nation. So nobody should make us look as if we are stupid people all over the place and Africans who do not know what to do. What to do can be done. Number one on the list is to understand that as a society, we do not play to the gallery of any other nation. Nationhood is about interest. Everybody has their interest. Where is the Nigerian interest? Where is the African interest? I mean, I liked what one of your guests said, because I've been watching Mr. Romans, I can't remember the surname very well, the economist or the strategist in economy. He was speaking sense. That is the person who has made strategic sense. He's talking about the fact that economic development is even different from an economic increase. We're talking about the development of the average Nigeria that few years ago we were declared the poverty.
Madam, these are recent issues and you are spot on. However, we are not having hardship protests for the first time. My colleagues in the morning...
No, not for the first time, of course.
Just a moment. My colleagues in the morning dated back to 1929 when the Aba women's riots, came up because of hardship. In this republic, I have listed that there are at least 13 protests that have taken place. A good chunk of them are about hardship. Fuel price hike, salaries not being paid, NLC came out, ASU came out, the people came out, and the rest of those things. So I'm wondering, and then, if we look back in time, you'd see that these hardship issues, just 46 years ago, I've said that quite a number of times, there was a protest, a hardship protest, cost of living protest, that culminated in what was then called Ali Must Go protests. It was because of hardship, and the students were the one that took it up at the time. The people in government 46 years ago are not the ones that are in government now. So it leads me to ask you this question of leadership production. Do we have a leadership factory in this country? Do we have a leadership development system that in another 40 years, we're not talking about what we are talking about now, as we are talking about what happened 46 years ago today?
You are spot on your question. And I was in a meeting a few years ago in Washington, and former President Obasanjo was also one of the guests. And he said one of the crises is that where are the leadership schools? The truth is that two fundamentals are required for the development of the society to the highest height. One is leadership. Secondly is nationalism, patriotism. We do not have those two. Nigeria has lost the sense of patriotism over the years due to bad governance, because it's like the carrot and the stick. And the leaders have not been developed because what we have is still the feudal system. Every nation how to move away from this feudality. What we have in Nigeria is not really democracy, it's Marxism. It's socialism. We don't really have a democratic government where the people really make the choices, because they are too poor to make choices. They are too uneducated to make choices. And those who are educated have become people who are only interested in themselves. For a nation to be cohesive, the leaders have to be nationalistic. They have to be patriotic. They have to think Nigeria. Today we have changed the national anthem to Nigeria We Hail Thee. Nigeria We Hail Thee means Nigeria is fundamental to everything we are doing. So if you're going to be a leader in Nigeria, you say you want to serve as governor. I've heard some of their comments, and I'm disappointed because you are talking to Nigerians as if they are foreigners. You are talking to these people as if they are outsiders. Where is the National Orientation Office that is in charge of this cohesiveness, communication to the people? If you're making policy changes that is going to change the lives of people, how do you communicate that? You just can't make decisions overnight and you want everybody to be hunky-dory and everybody to be happy. That's not leadership. There's something called change management system in leadership. You want to create change from A to B. The people who are going to be affected needs to know. What cushions are you putting in place? What communication, whether it's through the ballets, through the pastors, through the imams, whatever system you want to use to cascade through the local government, which we still are, the jury is out there concerning local government in Nigeria that is lacking. There is no leadership understanding. That my leadership is not about what I want to do. My leadership is what the nation needs to grow. What does Nigeria need? Yes, if you're talking about removal of fuel subsidy, where is the presentation to the people publicly on the whole gamut of the finances of what we call the NNPC? Who is in charge? What money is being sent? Okay, they said we have our petroleum. We are not producing enough to cushion the economy, and what the dollar is coming only through petroleum. What other ways can we make sure the dollar happens? Like that Mr. Roman said, activate the economy. Have an agricultural emergency. People are no longer going to the farm, so the number of food brought in, Nigeria, its population is over 200 million, and the average population of that 200 million are youths. And youths eat more than adults. So there's no food. All of us are scrambling together. Okay, now they said they have removed tariff on the import of essential things. How quickly can that be augmented? What pathway are you showing? If you're not coming on television to speak all the time, communicate to the people through radio, through different languages, you are not leading. Leadership is not positional. The problem with the Africans and the Nigerian leadership is positional leadership. It's not transformational leadership. Leadership is hard work, functionality, looking at all indices, looking at data, looking at the issues of the demographic of your people. Why is it happening more in the North? The reaction in the North is not surprising to me because the North it has been under tremendous pressure from the issue of Boko Haram to the issue of hunger, insecurity, lack, poverty. The poverty level of the North is higher. Lack of education. Meanwhile, youth are coming out of homes. Babies are being born, and there is no measure being in place. So this whole reaction should not be surprising to somebody who understands leadership. Leadership will always have this reaction from the home gate to the city gate when things are not in place to cushion the economy. On the other side, you now hear the leader. Somebody is building a house, billion. Somebody has cleared our people's account by 700 billion. You hear all sorts of news. And these young ones are really watching on social media, watching channels, watching here, and they're hearing all sorts of things that are winding them up mentally. And you said you're leading? No, we need to put a stop. For me, I don't know whether the Tinubu government is ready. They can. I mean, for a man who has been a Democrat for a long time, he can. But there are decisions they need to make as a people. Bring down the cost of governance. Part one. The people must see that happening, and they will be endeared towards your decisions that you make next. There are many decisions to be made right now.
Okay, thank you so much for painting that picture of what leadership should look like. Benite, right there, join us via Zoom. It was great, very interesting comments from you there, and definitely would really love to experience the kind of leadership that you just described there at some point. And definitely we know that in Africa we've had challenges, when it comes to leadership and handling, followership. But let's take it on to Abuja now. We have Professor Okeke-Chukwu there. And I want to come to you now, Prof. Definitely we know the Protest is about bad governance at this point, and I'd like to hear from you now. Does bad governance automatically lead to negatives, for the macroeconomic indicators like inflation, debt, and all of that? Help us break that down.
Well, one of the major mistakes we make is to focus on the conventional notions of macroeconomics. Take a simple concept we're familiar with right from primary, secondary school, per capita income. It tells you the volume of wealth distributed across a population. So if you come to Abuja and you find out that Abuja is worth $13 trillion, you divide it by the population, you'll say that per capita income, each person in Abuja lives at the level of probably $1 million a year. Meanwhile, that money, all of it may belong to 3% of the population. So let's leave those official development economic terms and look at reality. Question number one, how much was a bag of rice X number of years ago? How much is it today? Is it the same people that are buying that rice? The answer is yes. Has their salary also increased within that period? The answer is no. So leave macroeconomics, go and look at your cousins in the village. Are they faring any better? The answer is no. The senator who has got a new SUV that's bulletproof, his village people, I hate to use that expression, which of them has improved economically in the last 12 years? Not one. Has the environment improved? No. Have schools improved? No. So that's the reality of it. That's the economics of visible evidence. That's what we need to deal with, and we have to locate it appropriately. It's not about Tinubu's government. The fact we keep ignoring is that the Nigerian state, as it exists today, is a very well-constructed criminal enterprise with a leadership crisis that cannot be blamed on any political party at all. Because if you look at the ruling party, is it true that more than 60% of them were not in that party before? So let's disaggregate it. Let's even take it away from government so that the criminality will be obvious. Just go and check the profits posted by corporate Nigeria. Dangote Cement, how much profit did he post in the last year? Bua Cement, banks. In an economy like this, a bank is putting 200 and something billion as profit. A cement company is posting between 100 and 230 billion as profit. And then a bag of cement is unaffordable, affecting housing. Now, assuming that company made 5 billion profit, which means what you've got after all you've done, would it have done badly? No. It means that the pricing is dishonest. It means that the controls for consumer protection doesn't exist. It means that government thinking, including that of national planning, industries and job creation, they are not considering the fact that corporate Nigeria is part of a grand conspiracy. You have the political wing. That's why you can get a policy that suits those who are milking us. So putting it all together, what are we talking about? And Benitez spoke about patriotism. The average Nigerian does not see the Nigerian state in any positive light because for him or her, it doesn't exist. But there's some mischief in suggesting there is a problem that started today. So this government, you see, keep this government, no. You speak of national leadership because you ask yourself, what's the consensus position of traditional rulers on what is going on today? What's the position of corporate Nigeria? What is it that's happening at the level of government itself? What are the senators doing? Okay, they were given palliatives, I think 70 billion to share in the National Assembly. Why states were given 5 million? Now, which of the lawmakers went to his state to go and say, okay, I got this extra 600 million for me as palliative. Since you sent me, I've come to drop 400. Let's decide what to do with it. It didn't happen. So we are looking at the presidency. We are not realizing that local government chairmen, ward chairmen and councillors and state governors exist. So what is this all leading up to? You have a situation where progressively the concept of community, not even state, is disappearing. Because when you have thieves operating in a community, it's not the man from Katsina who is commander, or the man from Bayelsa who is commander in Sokoto that will know the local people. There's a disintegration of the soul of the Nigerian state. There's the retreat of citizenship. In its place, you find people who just want to eat today. That's why somebody in Borno will be giving information to Boko Haram, who are bombing his cousins. That's why you will find IPOB active. Now, let's even look at it. Let's go to the southeast, for instance. Somebody, I think, has claimed responsibility for the shooting of 4 policemen because the government is a terrorist organization, wants to drive them out. Simple logic. If you say this is Biafra land, that means nobody should be in the forest and be coming out to kidnap people, isn't it? You go and shoot a policeman who is somebody's son, somebody's husband, or somebody's brother and uncle. And by doing that sporadically, so it's even at the level of public engagement, even at the level of engagement for quote-unquote revolution, the quality of thinking across the entire layers of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, level of public consciousness, individual consciousness, has deteriorated so dramatically that holistic thinking no longer exists.
There was a sentence he made you made the retreat of citizenship.
Yes.
And that is a very dangerous trend. And if we see a lot of that happening, then what are we left with as a people? But before we continue that conversation, I want to be able to give you an update on what's going on across northern Nigeria. And then, of course, here in Abuja, I think we're going to start with Abuja, just so we can have some of those visuals. You can see what's happening in different parts of the nation's capital as these protests continue. Worrying sights, some of them. We're going to start off with Gwagwalada, just so you can see what's happening there. Remember, these are eyewitness visuals, so bear with us on the quality. But then you're seeing a lot of security agents on the road right there in Gwagwalada. There's a smoke I'm seeing from a distance, and I think I know where this place is, not too far from where the school is.
You know, those are soldiers, actually.
And those are soldiers.
It tells you how escalated the situation
so what? And the smoke in the background also a bit worrying. I think we also have some visuals from Duse, I think, just so we can understand what's happening all across the nation's capital. And remember, our correspondents are actually everywhere in the nation's capital trying to get all the details. And of course, they'll be joining us shortly. You know, but let's see if we can...
So I think the situation with looting
is
quite rampant.
Looting, yes.
And we've seen that happen in several places. I think this is this the Kano one? I don't think so. But there's a tweet from the Minister of Science and Tech where he talked about the Digital Innovation Park in Kano State, which was supposed to be launched next week to support technical talent accelerators, has now been set ablaze and looted by protesters. This is a very terrible situation.
And we saw that visual from Yobe not too long ago with the buses getting burnt and things like that. What has that got to do?
There's the statement.
How does that help what we're trying to get done? What people are trying to do is ventilate their anger and say, look, we've had bad governance, but then we always see these situations crop up.
It's understandable?
It is understandable, perfectly understandable.
How so?
Very simple. When you have a crowd and not a group, when there's no understanding of the objective of a protest, anything that belongs to the state becomes a target. You can't get the governor, but you can get state government vehicle. You can get, okay, this is their boss, and that's where the disconnect occurs. Like somebody said, it has to, brief people.
I think we're seeing that right now. This looting is in Kano.
Yes.
There's looting going on right there in Kano.
This is the center of the ministry.
Yes, but the point to note here is that who is to benefit from it? Not the state government.
But other people are aware.
How will they be aware when their leaders don't talk to them?
But you see, it's actions like this that make people in government say, don't come out to protest, so it's just going to be an avenue for looters. If this is actually happening, were they right?
The point is this. Who will go and destroy the bed on which you will sleep, except an ignorant person? You build this up. Who are those closer to the people? Local government chairmen. People, we need to understand the value of communication. You bring people at these various levels, explain what this is, provide for ward rally. In your ward, you are not likely to have so many youths. The ward chairman talks to them. There is thing government is doing. The local government chairman tells the state government chairmans. Cohesion can only be built by communication. Now, this is, as good as it is handled as an elite engagement. We've built this hub. We've talked about it on TV. We are going to launch it. People are walking past it. They don't know what it is, even in the local government where it is. Political education of the people is the missing element. Ask yourself, we had an election 1 year ago. Which political party has had meetings, rallies, where the leaders meet? Imagine that the parties have meetings every quarter. In other words, you instruct your local government chairman, hold quarterly meetings, bring the people together, put them in a bus, give them a stipend, party membership develops with it. But there's no such contact until election. And then that's when you talk about patriotism, which they don't know what it means.
Prof, there's something related to that, which I think is a problem, and it's something our economists have always pointed out. It has to do with planning and knowing who you're planning for. And it directly speaks to census. When governments talk about planning, does it suggest to you that we haven't had a census in a while, but we hear the government is planning to do this, the government is planning to do that? For who? What number of persons?
The problem is at 3 levels. First, you're talking about planning. The idea about planning you have, is it correct? Question number 1. Number 2, do you have the statistics? And I'll cite an example. 2006, when the Federal Minister of Education, I was head of communications, and the information we got on arrival was that Nigeria had 9,600 secondary schools. Now, that's a lot. Well, it didn't look true. The minister said, I don't believe this. I said, it's unlikely, thinking of what we even have in our plate. Long story short, the ministry carried out a census and found out we had nearly 15,000 secondary schools. Your Minister of Education, who are you planning for? You don't have the statistics. Then we've also had the figure up till then, for 10 years, about 10 million Nigerian children out of school. That's a very large number. Now they say it's up to 13. Again, false information, because it's coming from what you call the international community. Simple fact, our last census figure gave us the number of children that ought to be in secondary school, if you use that figure, was supposed to be 47-point-something million. School census says there were 20-something million. So at the primary level, you had more than 23 million children not in school. At the secondary level, the number that ought to be in school from the population was 33.9 million. The number in school, 6.4. Now, those are the young men on the street. Now, what am I leading up to with all of this? The bulk of your population is not caught under any net in your planning. Now, let's assume all these things I'm saying is not true. Let's take facts. How many go to Nigeria Office of Statistics? Is it true that up to 3 million people are not in school, or at least poor and without skill in Kano, one state? Now, let's imagine there is only, in some of the states, just 1 million around Nigeria. That's 36 million out of school. So, back to the point, I'm leading up to the point you made about planning. The conceptual framework with which the leadership is talking about any kind of planning, does it make sense? The idea of planning is about infrastructure. Like a state says, we want to make massive investment in education. And I've said this on programs several times. The last Federal Executive Council meeting under Buhari before his second return, there was an investment of 4.2 billion to build 6 model secondary schools that will be the best in the country. It will take you 5 years, right? Within that time, you have introduced 1 single soul into the Nigerian human capital market. What do? You have 100 and something unity schools. Divide that money among them. So you find that investment in education infrastructure is being mistaken for investment in education. That's part of the crisis. So when you now think of planning, let's suppose I'm in charge of Niger Delta, NDDC. Okay, we are planning to develop the Niger Delta. We plan where to build roads. We plan where to give them town hall. This is a fishing community that the water has been so polluted that they can't fish. I can spend 3% of that money to give them a massive water reticulation system that could enable them become fishermen again in that environment. No. But I award contract to my friends where it's not a Niger Delta villager that will build the roads. Now, what am I leading up to? The conception of national public interest and public need is distorted. Therefore, policies driving it, also driving these things, also service needs defined by those who are alien to the environment. Now, so when you see protest, you're not just talking about hunger or fuel price or whatever. It's a build-up of many variables that create discomfort, at the bottom of which you find that the leadership elite becomes a source of a demoralizing reference, because what you're going through is not reflected at that level. And that's why the position of a president is always a dangerous one. At the level of the presidents, you said, send these bags of rice. There was the video yesterday, 4 days ago. The group, an organization, I think either some association was given their own to share. It was not enough to have a bag of rice. So at the level of the presidents, you probably be telling yourself, these people are just being dishonest and stupid upon all the things you're doing. See, we sent 9 trucks to this place. Not one truck got there. And that's where the issue of monitoring and evaluation comes in. I mean, because the state has become so predatory that anybody given a responsibility is thinking of what to corner, not whom to serve.
I mean, we're looking at palliatives. One of the arguments against it is the fact that, look, you're talking palliatives, we're trying to get development to happen. Palliatives and development are not the same thing, but we'll get to that shortly. Mr. Segun Awosanya, is he still on? If you can hear us. Let's talk a little bit about the organization of a protest, because you mentioned that earlier. You talked about, the dynamic of the mob and protesting in a heated polity, and then the concept of hunger versus actual strategy. I don't know if he can hear me, if Segun Awosanya can hear me.
I can hear you.
I want you to be able to talk to us a little bit about that. What dynamics for this protest do you think were not observed, in your view, as someone who, at least I remember you from the NSAS protest? So what dynamics do you think the organizers of this particular set of protests didn't observe?
I will take you back in history, because I always believe that wisdom remains profitable to direct. Because if you are misguided and we are virtuous and passionate about that virtuosity to the point where it drives that single idea that presents itself as a silver bullet to the problem at hand, we're going to miss the point. Right now, most of the states that are on fire right now, they're being set back. It has not solved any problem. And that's where I'm coming from. Nobody said government was right. Nobody said government is doing the right thing, because I mentioned communication problem as a word. And there have been a serious disconnect, not from this administration alone, but from series of administrations. The problem has not changed, because the mindset that created the problem has not changed. So people have commercialized protests to the point that we don't even feel the impact of the people caught in the middle. Now, there are innocent people out there who are citizens, who are young, who have, probably had fallen out with their parents, and governments that is supposed to fill the gap with orientation, with so many other things, they have failed to communicate and to carry along these people. And then the gap becomes wider now between the government and the people they lead. And we have 70% of these people. Now, the way it's working now, people can come and see that gap rather than educate the public to say, look, there are ways in which you can get what we want in terms of making them accountable to what they promised. Number 1, security. Number 2, human capital development. Number 3, fixing of the economy of the nation. These were common grounds that were reached during the election that led to people voting for certain political parties. Now, protesters will look at it. People who are genuine or let me say advocates. Advocates will look at it and delve into the problem and say, where exactly is our common ground? They're not going to go to hunger. Going to hunger means your own purpose is to what you set out to achieve is to incite the people, draw them out, and let them do whatever it is, and then take no responsibility. Okay. We've seen this done before. But when we use other means of galvanizing the people to make them understand the problem, the federal government is doing A, B, C, and D. The idea behind protests usually is in those years where we have military interregnum and there is no legislature. There is no government that is close to the people enough for us to say, let us engage the closest government to us. We just had federal government, local government autonomy, and we cannot say that dividends of that will start happening immediately. Secondly, what exactly have we done with, or what exactly has happened with our legislature? Are they representing us at the state level and at the federal level? That one too is not there. And also our state governors, how many of us have realized the fact that their allocation is now double what they used to get? How much responsibility do they have with the people? Now, if you look at it from the perspective of somebody who wants Nigeria to progress, you will not just say we're declaring 10 days of rage. When a single visit to the MTN office led to violence, we cannot promote such. We will look at it in a way of letting government understand precisely what they need to do and ask ourselves, What can I do to bridge this gap?
Mr.
What can I do to express? Yes, sir.
Mr. Awosanya, sorry to butt in. Prof here had talked about one thing, that this was inevitable. And you've also mentioned words like educate, strategize, and for those who don't know, you are one of the proponents of the NSAS protest, then you pulled out eventually. So
it wasn't a protest, it was an advocacy.
Fair enough.
It was an advocacy from 2017 to 2020.
Even Prof doesn't believe that, but let's continue. Now, a lot of people believe that you would understand the processes of a protest or an advocacy, as you say, to achieve a common goal. But in this case, with the level of hunger in the country, using the words educate and strategize that you've used, how do you do this or implement this with people who are really hungry to achieve the objectives of a protest such as this?
I don't organize protests, like I've mentioned before. You see, a lot of things are mixed up in this country. We just look at things on the surface and then we define them. I don't organize protests. I've never engaged using protests because I know it's a free-for-all declaration where you cannot separate anyone from anyone. Hoodlums are citizens too. Whatever it is that they understand is what they're going to practice, and you don't have control over them. That semblance of, or that idea of control is what will always fail men, especially on the field. The way this would have been done better would have been to find a proper common ground between the people and the government, which should have been achieved long before now. It is not when you have incited people and you have brought them out that you now begin to look for ways in which you can start building the bridge when you're already on it. And that's what we're saying. Anybody can be passionate and take offense and lash out at other people because they didn't hear what they want to hear. But the real issue here is pushing people out to say, we are hungry, we must come out, as if there is a solution in that already. Because there are other people who feel, oh, this is what everybody is doing. We live in social media era where everybody wants to be a part of something that is bigger than them because of lack of purpose. And we have a lot of people who are idle right now, who are willing to give themselves to anything that is politically correct. This is not to say that government has done right, don't get me wrong. And the approach will have been different if we have not said, oh, 10 days of rage is coming. So the proper means is to let the government know that, look, the people don't know what you're doing. You are winking in the dark. Your ministers don't communicate. Your aides, who are even youthful, they are not responsible even to their peers to say, these are what government is doing, so that they can get a buy-in from the public to say, we have not been reached as far as this is concerned. This and these are the gaps we are having on their end. And look at the number of aides that they have. How many of them are even owning to even claim responsibility for the things that
Can I just ask you a straightforward question? If you think that protests are not the way out, Mr. Awosika, can you hear me?
That's what he said.
Are you saying that protests achieve nothing?
Yes or no?
The tool, protest is the tool that you use to show discontent, to call the attention of government to the depth of a problem. Government is aware of the problem already.
I really want to get a clear, because I want to throw it to Juliet Benitier. What do you think about protest? Does it achieve nothing?
Are you asking me now?
No, I wanted to get a yes or no from Mr. Awosika, but I think...
Okay, yes.
What I'm saying, look, protest is a call to action. It's a way of calling the attention of government to what you're going through. It doesn't solve the problem. It's just like your doorbell.
All right.
And before you go all out protest, let me finish. Before you go all out protest, you must have exhausted all lawful means. And that has not been done here. If you look at all the demands against the justification of the protest, I don't think the right thing has been done here. We have simply incited people and pushed them to the street.
Incitement. Juliet Benitier, let me take it to you now as a leadership coach. I listened to your initial comment. I don't know if you agree with the word incitement and his position that a protest would not solve anything.
I'm quite concerned about that way of putting it. But also, I want to thank Prof for such a brilliant analysis on what should be done. These are brilliant minds that should be put in a room and for us to have a trajectory in a direction we should go. And like we repeat, it's not just about this present government and it's not personal. And for anybody to say that protest doesn't work, that's not true. And that protest is just the end, that's not also true. Throughout history, there are ways to, of course, do protest. And I agree with him that the strategy for this particular protest maybe was not as sound. But I watched the Zoom meeting with Falana and a whole lot of leaders talking about this protest, and many things have been said at the back door, and Nigerians have been agitated from the labor union that are threatening strikes many of the time over, and many other things that are happening. So we should not say that a lot of things have not been done. Yes, as advocates, we should strategically have an advocacy agenda. And as leaders, we should also know that there's already agitation because you're feeling the pulse. Like the great Churchill told one of his leaders, say, don't lie to me. Tell me what is happening in the nation. Sometimes leaders are so isolated, they don't know what is happening within the polity. It is not by magic within 1 year. The price differences, the inflation in the country is horrendous. Yes, unfortunately, the population of the youths in Nigeria are uneducated and uninformed properly. But who is responsible for that? Why do we have the Ministry of Information and Culture? Why do we have the National Orientation Office? What are they doing exactly? Like Professor said earlier on, and I think some other guests talked about the town hall meetings. Why are you not engaging the people? Change management, I repeat, requires communication to the people that will be affected by your leadership changes. You need to realize that society is not an imagination in your head or a desire of your heart. Societies have been built time and time over. We're talking about 500 years, 400 years, 300 years of great societies who have had this protest. They have had issues. They've gone through many things that we don't even need to begin to repeat our mistakes. But unfortunately, the way Africans are repeating mistakes is a disgrace in leadership. We need to realize that prior to now, the moment we realize that hardship had begun, the price of yam is more expensive than the United States. It doesn't make sense. Yes, a few of us as elite class, we're surviving, we're overcoming, but we should not be irresponsible not to know the pain of our people. Professor talks about the village people. A young man said he used to ask for his parents to send him stuff. But he later realized that the difference between where he's coming from, Ondo to Lagos, is not 300. So what's the problem? The difference between Gary here in Lagos and in Uyo is like 300 or 200. It's ridiculous. What has suddenly happened to us that usually we take from the villagers to come into the city? The difference is not there. So the question of leadership cannot be negated. In short, leadership comes before strategy. I don't care what strategic imperatives you put in place. If there are no leaders who are concerned leaders of a nation, of its people, compassionate about the sufferings of the people, are we looking at Nigeria right now and say there's no solution? That is an insult.
The challenge is not whether or not there is a solution, if you ask me. The challenge is how we have encountered the issues over the years, just as you said. We're coming back to the issues because it got us to where we are today. All of these things that we ought to have done that we haven't done, the things that we did that we shouldn't have done, we have not. That's what brought us here today. This is where we are now. And, earlier we brought you a loop. By the way, we apologize that we brought you to you on that loop at the time. But now we have a longer version for you of lootings, in Kano State. And this is what we have right now, And it is not something that we want to see. This is what is happening. This has happened before. And this is what the fears that have been expressed. And is there any way we could have forestalled this? But this is what we have right now going on in Kano State, and God knows how long ago, again, it's going to come. We have seen, as Terry mentioned earlier, the industrial park, the digital industrial park,
right,
you know, that the Minister of Digital Economy talked about, you know, that was built to be commissioned sometime next week. And, you know, that is what we have right there in Kano State. And according to him, in that tweet, millions of naira down the drain. But then there's something that Professor Kekechuku said about it, that look, people see beautiful, wonderful, amazing, but was there any engagement to let them know, guys, this is for you?
Right.
That facility, for instance, is located in a particular local government, but is there a local government there to tell them that this is for you? And even if you're going to commission it and all of that. Same thing we can say for what's happening in Nasarawa State, perhaps, where a heavy security presence is said to ensure a peaceful procession. This is what we have right now in Nasarawa State. The Commissioner of Police, Usman Nadada, had announced the deployment of 4,000 personnel to monitor the protest in the state. Of course, as you can see, people are carrying placards, several inscriptions like "End Bad Governance," "We're hungry," and chants of "Bamoye" in Hausa, which means we are not interested. I mentioned that we haven't really heard from any government official.
Right.
Now we have heard.
There we have one.
No less than the governor of a state.
And we also have him there promising, "Thank you for coming."
Oh,
yeah,
was it a visit? I don't know, but, you know, well, madam, you know, you were saying something the other. Okay, let me take you to Prof, because he was saying something along the line of, you know, the leadership showing responsibility. You know, Prof, so you have seen some, you know, we've taken you across a number of states, at least 6 states so far. We've gone to Yobe, gone to Nasarawa, Zamfara, Kano. We've also taken you to Cross River and Rivers states so far. And of course, rounding that off is that conversation with the governor of Rivers State. That demonstration, what does it say to you? Do you think it achieves anything with the people? Do you think it is something that other, you know, governors can, you know, take a lead from?
Yes, it is something to emulate. It's commendable. The point is this: a crowd usually does not have a clear, straightforward consciousness. But anything that captures their attention very easily neutralizes more than 60% of the hostility in the air. The fact that they've been told that the governor wants to listen to us already, even those who are trying to destroy something on the road will say, let's go and see the governor. And now the governor starts by telling them, okay, he understands what's going on, etc. That's the sort of thing leaders should do. The average protester is a citizen. It's not a murderer. It's not a criminal. It's somebody who is living his life, or who finds himself or herself constrained by challenges of survival that makes him angry with everything and with nothing in particular. Now, the governor or local government chairman or ward chairman or councillor represents authority. And that's the kind of authority that could affect his or her life. And you say, look, I'm very angry with you. And I ask, okay, well, what is it about? I'm angry because you're not doing this, you're not doing that. I see, actually, some of those things are not being done. How do you suggest we go about it? Because for you to come out, really, this thing has gotten to you. Now, that kind of conversation, the energy that will go into screaming and throwing things goes into thinking of solutions, thinking of specific suggestions, leading to a situation where if you're asked, okay, sir or ma, name 3 most important things that you believe we should do. So the governor of Rivers State, which in fact is a state a lot of people to be the one that should already have burned down by now, the example from there is commendable. The other thing is for the protesters to think through some of their demands and ask themselves to what extent it's both pragmatic and realistic. Now, you talk about fuel. Remember that on each occasion we've had fuel price increase. We've always had more or less the same narrative. We're going to use it to build roads and hospitals, etc. I remember that when this one was withdrawn after the current president came in, it was in the news, and you can Google and confirm that in the first week they had saved $400 million from subsidy. So what led to the price increase? Was that a lie? etc. And in all of this, 1 year has passed. Those bearing the brunt are not happy about it. So when people feel they are spoken to, it becomes exciting. We matter. But it will be unfortunate if all that talk is just in order for them to disperse, because the problem will still be there. I think it gives Subara the opportunity to identify, isolate, and discuss with the leaders. What is it we need to do in the short term? Can you articulate these needs? Do you have record of all those who are with you in this protest? They will need to produce a register. The production of that register will also deplete the ranks of those. If you're writing, you can't be in this, you can't be protesting. So those are the things. Let them review it. How much of the demands are realistic? Okay, if you say you want it to come to 200, you want the government to come and discuss in the street, is that the best option? Etc. So let them streamline these things to what you might call feasible conversation nuggets, so that you don't celebrate the fact that you went and protested, you celebrate the fact that you were listened to, that there are specifics, and it shouldn't be enough that government has taken your record of how you feel. Get whoever you're speaking with to schedule with you the next meeting for a review. Because he won't implement it immediately, he'll consult. Say, okay, well, I'll call you back, you guys back, so and so and so, you represent this area, you represent this organization, let's meet again in 2 days. If you say 2 days, you've deflated everybody. They won't riot for 2 days, and in 2 days, actually, you come out, these are our suggestions, what do you think? Conversation begins. And that conversation shouldn't end when the protest ends. Use it to rebuild citizenship, which doesn't exist in this country anymore. You just have individuals out to make a kill in one way or another, sometimes at the expense of the state. And that has become the subsisting political culture and is not helped by the reflexes of the visible leaders at all levels. When we speak of leaders, we say politicians. Traditional rulers, are they really setting good examples? When the people see them giving titles to known criminals? When somebody is top-banned, whereas he is leader of a Boko Haram faction? When church leaders make you the illustrious son of the church, when everybody knows that 2 years ago you couldn't repair your motorcycle, but now you're donating 50 million to the church because you're in public office, you know, and all of that. And when a politician, you win an election and a bank comes to you with an ATM card already in your name, and they tell you that on this card you have 200 million, we can work out the papers later, is a loan advance you're likely to need later. This other one, we have $20,000 in it. And that means they know your income, but they expect you're about to loot. And then when also the citizens make similar demands, okay, you're now in office, I need 12 million in order to start my business, expecting you to pick it from somewhere. So 3 things.
Well, Prof, if you can hear me, it sounds a little like Government 101, you know, and I hope that the aides to the governor, because I don't think I can ask the governor to be taking notes. All his aides are taking notes of some of these things, you know, so that at least it can be implemented. But and all 36 governors, if I dare say. Dr. Osanya, before I go to my colleague Kelly, who has some information for us, is this something you think might work, the suggestions from Prof?
The suggestion from Prof is not different from what I was saying, because protesters don't negotiate. That's where we have advocates. What advocates does, after defining the problem, rather than tell the people take to the street, they will engage them at various levels. We have custodians of societal behavior, and we must not present a situation where leadership is defined any other way other than responsibility. Whether we're talking about the people in political power or we're talking about those of us speaking here. Prof has been very balanced and very straightforward with what she was saying. He was saying void of emotion and void of tantrums. And I appreciate his intelligence and his connection with what is going on. I'm not just a bookworm. I am on the street. We have organized engagement with ministers in the past 1 week. We have been having that on Twitter. But I know that doesn't impact what is on the street, because already they've told people by August 1st, you must take yourself to the street. The governors and the leaders, the political leaders we have, they believe in knee-jerk reactions. They are reactionary. They don't preempt things. They don't believe in early warning signs. No matter how long you warn them about certain things, what is happening now is not new to them. They are aware of this. And we're also saying, why we're saying governors have missed it out, or leaders have missed it out at all levels in their communication.
Dr. Osai, if you can hear me, we're not hearing this for the first time either. The fact that governments are generally knee-jerk in their reactions. Is that some kind of policy that governments only react to the issues and rather as opposed to being proactive? Because it would seem like that's the only way we do it over the years. I mean, I've been old enough for maybe just a few decades. Is that the policy of governments?
It's not. It's the problem of society. People in government don't fall from us. They are from our society. So what we're dealing with now is the problem of society. What the people are doing now is not different from what the people in government are doing. They're only doing it differently because they're in power. So that's what we're trying to address by saying we can all normalize or build a culture of dialogue where we can look at things pragmatically, not creating drama unnecessarily or trying to win an argument or leaving the problem and then fighting and tearing down ourselves. What we can do is ask ourselves a question: how will this current trajectory help the nation? Already places the way they are burning stuff now. I know what has happened with Treaty, with Bosun Tijani's innovations. They have set them back in Kano. So how will we continue to use that as a means of engaging or getting at people in power? And then we'll now establish somebody else who will do worse than
But Prof talked about communication, the absence of communication, Dr. Usoya. Well, we may say that it is not the business of the Minister of Digital Innovation that he should be the one to be engaging the people in the state. When we have a governor, we have ministers, we have a governor, we have commissioners, we have local government chairmen. However, he went to their states. And so if there is no system of communication, and I believe that it's a serious problem with government generally, communication. Now, there's a humongous, the videos are all over the place. Communication is a major problem. People have gone in there, just as he said in his tweet, and have destroyed everything and taken, as you said, taken us back to ground zero. But then, before that project began, was there a communication mechanism, particularly from the state government and from the local government chairman, so that people can take ownership and say, no, we can destroy everything else, but not this one?
I'm not certain it was done, and even if it was done, it wasn't done robustly. If not, we will all be talking about it now. And that was one of the problems confronted by them. Bosun Tijani was also engaged a few days ago with Nigerians who are asking typical questions, critical questions about what they are doing and why they are winking in the dark. I said this earlier on. Government, each time you don't carry people along, you don't know what you're doing, you don't have ownership in the things that you're doing, they are going to be readily available to destroy it because they don't know what advantage it is to them. So communication is a big thing. In fact, if you look at all the problems of major societies globally, it's all about communication. And government have not done well in this regard. And that's why people can take advantage of the populace because of the gap that have been created and use them for whatever. So we know that hunger is in the land. We know that there are certain problems, but protest and vandalization and the rest does not solve the problem. Fighting ourselves does not solve the problem. Pitching against people and trying to force them to say what we are saying does not solve the problem. The issues are there. Let's focus on the problem and be solution providers. That's exactly what we have been doing for years, and that's what we'll continue to do.
Just in closing, I mean, we talked about this earlier as day one. this is day one and it's this hot. What should we, we heard Adam Shomole say something recently, Terry, where he said it's impossible for for a protest to go on for 10 days without violence. And I know that's something I've heard you say as well. But just so we can understand what should be happening going forward to de-escalate things.
First of all, let us know that Borno State is the seat of the vice president. That's a very disturbing index. That's also the state where, I think by yesterday's report, the governor announced the rehabilitation and reintegration of 200,000 repentant Boko Haram. And he's receiving these numbers. You see, the danger we are playing with is fundamental. If I'm the vice president and this is going on in Gombe State, quite frankly, the governor, the local government chairman, the ward chairman, the councillors, they will tell me how come my people don't know what I'm doing in Nigeria.
Well, he's not from Gombe, he's from Borno.
Sorry, no, I meant Borno, yes. Why am I keep mixing them up.
Because you're referring to the curfew in Borno.
Precisely. So you see, the absence of a grip of your own terrain says a lot about the political illiteracy of people holding positions at that lower level. That's number one. Number two, and I'll cite an example. We had a situation in 2004 when a national event we organized was about to be disrupted by protesters. The first movie industry stakeholders consultative conference involving all movie makers. For the first time, the Arewa makers came together with Nollywood, venue Sheraton. The event was about to start, and we heard that some people were coming to picket the place and all of that. Very heavy going this thing. What did we do? I called up. There was a lot of hostility, so I called Charlie, my friend. Charlie boy, I said, Charles, are you at home? No. I drove down to this thing. I said, Charlie boy, I told him. He said, okay, what is it? I said, listen, this is what's going to happen. They opened the gate. I went in. That was in Lagos back then. I said, this is it. He said, what do you want? I said, you're a custodian of authority in this industry. Just come and visit the event before it starts. That was all. Moves that deflate obvious centers of discord. It's not TV announcements. There are real people in every environment. If I want to get hold of Kano, it's not by sending flyers. There are respected imams. One place in this country where people will visit at least 3 to 5 times every day is a mosque. It's all over Kano. Do those people understand? If they do and they talk to those who come to them, is it likely that less than 30% will go out? Yes. You see, we are ignoring the structures of community consciousness and thinking that talking to people who are elected is enough. It isn't. Because in many cases, it's not an election. They paid people. Why would somebody riot in a state? Protest in a state? Even if you're suffering from hunger, you understand that your brother is in Abuja suffering for Nigeria. You won't join. For a curfew to be imposed, it tells you a lot. But all of that aside, 3 issues on the table. Number one, Nigerians have reason to be angry and to protest because there's poverty, there's hunger. Number two, Nigeria must exist for you to continue protesting. Number 3, and most importantly, structure the issues you're angry about, present it, agree on a subsequent meeting, have definite agreements and outcomes and timelines. That's the way forward on this.
So I'm going to throw this question to all 3 of you just as to say goodbye, as your final statements. Curfews have been imposed in these 3 states, going to be likely will follow. But the big question is, what does this solve? And are there fears of possible escalation? What happens if the people defy the curfew? Does it get worse?
No, the first thing, what the curfew achieves is that it minimizes the possibility of total breakdown of law and order. So it's only those who are truly defiant and ready for the worst that will come out after a curfew. So it will de-escalate maybe the tension and to some extent the demographics of those who will come out. So it's a good move if there's complete degeneration. But the hope is that with that curfew, conversations will begin that will lead to people not wanting to come out after the curfew. But if it's just to keep them indoors, it doesn't solve the problem.
Okay, so let me throw it to Mr. Segun Awusanyo now.
Yeah, thank you. I believe that we all must recognize that true leadership and responsible citizenship are not just words, but actions. We must challenge ourselves to lead by example, be the change we wish to see. And this is not just about citizenry alone, even the leaders, everybody involved. We must inspire others through our words and our deeds by embracing the principles of mutual understanding, respect, and shared commitment to the greater good, and aim towards building a society founded on unity and accountability. The best way to start also, just like as a now, it's not just calling for curfew and ordering curfews. We must engage the custodians of societal behaviors. That's not just only the pastors, the imams, the leaders, the religious leaders, the influencers. We must bring them around and talk to them to reach out to people, because that's the easiest part. Government totally all over the world are not trusted by their people. I don't see any government that is smiling now anywhere in the world. So Nigerian governments must raise the bar. They must engage the people, meet them where they are, and bridge the gap between the people and themselves.
Thank you very much. Juliet Benitia, your closing comments, perhaps tied to the curfew.
I totally agree with Prof. and Dr. Segun, and more importantly, is that violence have never been the answer. And the issues of violence that you're seeing and the looting is all the issue of behavioral issues and the values within the society of a population that has youth. So there's youth restiveness, and government needs to address that beyond these issues that we are trying to talk about. And therefore, every Nigerian must realize that Nigeria is ours. And at the leadership level, we must begin to engage the people vigorously. You must communicate, you must engage. You can't be isolated. Leaders have been isolated in the past, never govern the people. And there are multifaceted way of addressing issues. And I totally agree with other guests. Apart from protest is not a silver bullet like Dr. Segun has said. Protest should be part of an encompassing strategy to get the attention of leaders, whether at the legislative level, governorship, or the president. And this protest is not just a Tinubu factor. It is a government issue of Nigeria as a frame. We need to recognize that it's not just a Tinubu issue, and we should look into the roots of this cause of continuous wickedness in our society from leadership. And every one of us as elite class especially, and that's why we're here, we have more responsibility because we have much that has been given to us. We must begin to educate the people around us, encourage them to be engaged and see what we can do beyond just governance. Government alone cannot solve all the problems. Every one of us must engage, as each one of us are raising leaders, engaging civil society, social issue, teaching and lectures. Everything must work for the interest of Nigeria. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Juliet Benita is a leadership coach. Segun Awosanya is an institutional reforms advocate and founder, Social Intervention Advocacy Foundation. And Professor Okey Kichuku is the executive director, Development Specs Academy. Thank you, gentlemen and lady, for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we will take a quick break now, but let's give you a quick update. For those who don't know, there are curfews imposed in Borno, Kano, and Yobe, and we do understand that the Gombe state government is contemplating imposing a curfew as well. We'll take a quick break and we'll be right back. This is the live coverage of the End Bad Governance coverage, protests across the country.